Hello, Mr. Lucien
Hey,
Jung, back on the
yeah,
podcast again. How are you doing, man?
yeah, good, good. How you doing?
Good. Very good. Very good. A little change of location. I think I've almost said that at the beginning of every podcast, just because I'm grinding through them within the last weeks to prepare them for the whole year. Good energy, good people. And that's also actually a topic that we want to talk about today. Meant to make a change while living within the confinements of the society we live in. Making a change, detaching from the social norms that sometimes your environment, your society puts yourself on. How have you experienced that through your young life so far? What were the first confrontations you had with that, where you thought, man, I would do this differently, though the society kind of doesn't really allow it or doesn't really like to see that change?
Yeah, well, I suppose, I don't know. Well, firstly, I think what's important is that um, the biggest thing is the admittance that maybe you do need a bit of change in your life.
Yeah,
Maybe you need to, I don't know, take a different perspective or see what could potentially work a little bit better. And I I don't know, as a lot of people sort of are, they get in routines, some healthy, some not so healthy. And for me, I guess the a big sort of a point where I felt as though I needed to make a change is where I had a bit of an unhealthy, more of an addiction, I suppose, a habit. And yeah, I wanted to change that, of course. And after trying a few times without any help, obviously the support of family and friends, but without really managing to do it on my own and with that support, I decided to maybe it was a suggestion to go and talk to someone a little bit more professional, I
yeah,
suppose. So as now, thankfully, as a lot larger. There's a lot. I believe there's a way larger group of people, a number of society that are now going to seek therapy out. And since November, October, something like that, um, I took the suggestion on from my girlfriend at the time, from my girlfriend, and went and saw a therapist about me smoking too much. So yeah, I decided to do it, and honestly, I was shocked. Um, at first, I I don't know. I always had the opinion that therapy wouldn't really work because I didn't really have much belief in it, and I had heard that you need to be 100% for it, and you need to be, willing to change and willing to help yourself for someone else to help you.
yeah,
And I suppose that was the major thing that stopped me. But after the first couple of weeks, after the first couple of sessions, I realized that I was pretty naive about the entire situation and how it actually works. And yeah, I don't know. I can safely admit now that I think it's a great thing. And I think it's fantastic that more and more people are doing it. But it's still not really a topic that's talked about that much
yeah.
in general. I don't know. I feel like people are still kind of afraid to bring it up or admit that maybe they're going to therapy. And yeah, I don't know. Do you also think that that's the case, or?
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that, because I think that it is very important to openly talk about that, just as we should be open to anything else we talk about, not to judge anyone. Yesterday, we recorded a podcast about the B2BX summit. I was in Dubai last week, and one of the first rules or things we talked about, especially for the getting through the next 2 years, which seem to get more and more crazy as the days goes by,
Mm,
is respecting each other's perspective and also your own. And I think this is very important in terms of talking about therapy, because I think there's a lot of people that think they need therapy,
mm-hmm,
but they might just need a healthy conversation with a friend. But then
mm-hmm,
on the contrary, there's also people that really, I think, should seek it, as you said, or should look for it. But as you said, they have some kind of restriction they give themselves, or some kind of obstacle they have they can't overcome to do that. I think, and the most of the people have the obstacle of thinking that they're weak if they do it. And that's why I'm so thankful to you, because I know, and I think that a couple of people that listen to this podcast, or that are out there in the world in general, they have exactly that obstacle. But once they have overcome it, however, they know it helped them, because you can't get through anything, not everything, just by yourself. And
Yeah, of
sometimes,
course.
unfortunately, your own energy isn't enough, and then your best friends or your family's energy isn't enough, and then sometimes there's just a time for a professional. And I think there's some cases where it's very, very necessary that people do that in order not to collide, or to get out of the rails completely. But then I also think it's just a smart tool to get better at something
It's
earlier, to try to prevent you from even starting to go down some kind of way.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up this term of using it as some kind of tool. And a friend of mine who had also been to therapy, he explained that so well to me in that sense. He said that essentially it's the opportunity to learn how to use the tools to manage your emotions and some aspects in your life a lot more easily then, for example, if you don't know how to do that, or if you don't know, for example, if you're going in the right direction, or if you're having, I don't know, moral complications, or whatever it might be, um, the action of going to therapy and talking to someone, they aren't there to fix anything that's going on in your life. They're essentially there to show you how to do it yourself. And the
Yeah.
benefit of that is afterwards, because obviously the uh, the plan is never to stay in therapy your entire life. The plan is to
No.
go there, learn how to use the tools that they show you, so that in the future you can manage that yourself, and you don't need to rely on other people, or you don't need to be able to do that. You can support yourself in situations where you need to, and
Yeah.
I think that's what's important.
Yeah. And I think it's just a toolbox, as you said, that you're able to use. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be talking to people you trust, or you feel like you're having a good time, or it feels good to talk to them. It's just that you're able to make that decision. Are you gonna, work it out with yourself, because now know how to, or are you going to do that and then also to a friend, because he or she gives you good energy, and maybe you can also give something back to her or to him by showing them that you trust them so much to address a topic that is very important to you, together with them. And I think it's a little far-fetched, but I think it's the same as with happiness. Like, if you can be happy yourself and you don't become happy through anything, you are happy if you decide to be happy, or you're not, in my opinion. But if you are, then you can choose to make another person happy, because you
Yeah.
can add on what you've already built for yourself, like in relationships and friendships and family or whatever.
Of course. I mean, naturally, if you are spending time with people who are loving life and enjoying it and are happy and enthusiastic, then it obviously helps in your mood as well, because you kind of get to share that, like you say, that energy with them, and it boosts yourself as well. And it's really great. And I suppose, I mean, of course, that happens in the opposite direction as well, but I think that's where you kind of need to consider, the other people's perspectives, and then you can support them if they aren't feeling, so full of energy or so capable of things. Then at least you have the opportunity to support them and to help them out. And of course, the idea is that they can return that favor, and they can also help you. I mean, that's the whole point of society, right? The whole idea is that we want to band together in some kind of community to help each other, to improve and sort of progress. And I think the best way to do that is obviously with this transfer of, this emotional energy that we sort of go through every day. I
Yeah.
don't know. I think, yeah.
Especially making that difference between what I feel like, unfortunately, has become a majority of people trying to go against each other. Like that's something we also talked about yesterday. This like elbow society, especially in business, which is understandable that people get into that because it's already been trained in school. You know, your grades are being portrayed on the board in the front. Who's
Yeah.
got that grade? Who's got that grade? You come home, your parents ask you naturally because they haven't learned it any other way. You know, it's
Yeah.
not their fault, but they ask you what grade you got, what the others got, and why didn't you get the grade of the kid that was better than you? And naturally we are an animal, you know, we are a certain sort of human race that is seeking the community and is seeking to be together, and that's why we naturally actually have the skill to network, to build our environment that we feel comfortable in.
Yeah.
But we've kind of been taught not to do that just because we have to fight for our own selves. And I think there
Yeah.
comes a point in your life, for some earlier, for some later, for some never, unfortunately, where you have to make that decision. If you're gonna, you know, screw the norm and build your surroundings, or if you're gonna play by the rules and then, you know, live with the consequences.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't know. I find that also really interesting. The fact that, I mean, from such a young age, children are also this idea that competition is such a vital part of life. And I think, yeah, obviously there is some benefits in this idea that you can motivate each other and do that, but it's a lot more rare that, children are taught, okay, instead of just trying to do this as faster than your neighbor, for example, you could ask, how did you do this? And then maybe later on they can help you out as well,
Yeah.
I don't know,
Or
but I
like,
think it's, yeah,
no, like I was gonna say, or like if you made a mistake, you're not being blamed for it, and you know the teacher goes through it with the red pen and marks everything that's wrong and doesn't talk about one point that you did well that you can then build
yeah,
on, trying to just compensate the things you did wrong. Because how can we learn other than through mistakes? You know, Rolf, my one of my mentors, who's been on the podcast, who's been mentioned thousands of times by me because he's a very important part of my life. He always says it's like this tunnel system, you know, like you take a tunnel, then it splits, and then you go this direction. Okay, there is no way further, so you go back, you take the other way. You
mm,
just need to try to not make the same mistakes over and over again, but to learn from them and then build on that. And
yeah, of
that's
course.
also like something in school. Like you're never taught to build on your strengths. You're always taught to be good at everything as much as possible.
Yeah, which I think is really, I don't know, I think that's just part of this idea that the education system is just trying to basically push through as many people to have the opportunity after their, general
Graduation.
school
Yeah.
sort of, yeah, that they can choose what they want to do. But the fact is that
Never really
children's
stops.
strengths and weaknesses, I think the children's strengths and weaknesses, they show well before the end of school. I mean, you see kids that are fantastic at literature, and then you see kids that are fantastic at mathematics or the sciences. And the fact is, well, the majority of the time, I should say, a lot of students aren't, so strengthened in both areas, but rather they prioritize in one way. And I think
Yeah.
what's great about further education is you get the opportunity to focus on your strengths. And that's what a lot of people do. But before then, we're still working away like we're some kind of, colony of ants just trying to submit as many children who can do everything. And
Yeah.
that's why I think so many kids lose so much motivation in school because they think, well, I don't actually suffice. I can't actually do everything. So why do I try? And then they lose interest and they do other things that aren't so beneficial.
Yeah.
There's this, I can't remember if, I don't think I talked about it last time I was on, but there was this class in high school in Australia. It's called Think Big. And I think it's a really, really, really good idea. And it just basically takes the entire educational system, turns it around. And the idea behind it is that the kids can choose essentially what they want to do. They can choose what direction they want to learn, and they, of course, they all choose their strengths and what they actually have interests in,
Yeah.
right? Naturally. And the percentage of kids that are graduating through this school is so much higher than the kids that are obviously going through the normal educational system, because they just can't seem to, I don't know, they just don't have the same motivation. I mean, they're
And
forced.
and not only graduating, but once you graduate, actually kind of knowing what you did the last 12 years.
Yeah,
Like, isn't that
exactly.
crazy? Like, because I don't think any 18-year-old wakes up and says like, well, I've wasted 12 years. They will
Yeah,
realize it way, way, way later, when for the most of them, it's way too late anyways. Because I mean, there's 30-year-olds, there's 40-year-olds that think they have no more time to live left,
yeah,
even though they're just at a half point in average. Anything can happen,
yeah,
but this like attitude. And that's what I think I've mentioned that a couple of times as well. We had this one class of rhetorics in our first semester in university, where our exam was to make a speech about a topic that we are concerned about or that we're interested in. And I talked about, it's kind of risky talking to professors about changing the educational system of Germany, but that was one of the ideas I had as well. There's so much bullshit that we learn in school that we're never going to need or use again.
yeah,
And taking like half an hour each class every day. Okay, so that would give you like 2.5 to 3 hours per week. If you take a half hour per day 5 days a week, and
yeah,
just take those 3 hours once a week to just ask the children when they're in first grade, and then throughout the whole years, what it is they want to do. They will tell you they want to be a firefighter, or those cliche
yeah,
stories, or an
of
astronaut in
course.
first grade. But then if they get used to being asked for their opinion, it will be more concrete as the time goes on, and that your goals and your why you do certain things will change. I think that's natural as well. But what
Yeah,
I've realized is, like, for example, in the event in Dubai, if you're already being asked by a very successful or older person, or they're older and successful, what your opinion is, that in my opinion, that is so much appreciation that comes your
yeah,
way, because you're not used to that. Because if you're in school, or if you're at work, or if you're in university, there's an older person or a more successful person that tells you how it's being done, and you're supposed to listen and shut up, you know
pretty much.
but that's not going
I
to
mean,
work, like, on the
no,
long term. That's not going to work.
it it's kind of ridiculous, because I don't know, that's essentially what this whole system's sort of based around, right? This idea that, okay, there's a right answer and you need to achieve that. And obviously there does need to be some kind of guidelines in that direction, but I think it needs to be more flexible from person to person.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. And I think that's what's so dangerous. I don't
Yeah.
know. We ended up sort of changing the subject a little bit. But
But
yeah,
it
I
goes
don't know.
back
I
to the
think
same way. Like, making a change in your life comes back, or starts with understanding what's gone wrong.
yeah, you're very right, actually, right? And sort of having that sort of perspective, or that ability to notice which way you want to go, right?
Yeah.
Um, which, if these kids, if for example children had this half an hour a day, like you say, then they would probably grow this ability to look in a more insightful way in themselves, and try and ask themselves, every day, oh, do I really want to do that? Or maybe my opinions change. Maybe I want to do that now. And which is absolutely fine as well. I mean, no one's wants are ever concrete. They're
that's
never.
that's that's such a waste of time to just do the same thing all the time. Again, I'm going back to
No.
this event. Sorry about that, because there's so many insights and so many things that made sense. One of the speakers, Nas Daily, one of the craziest YouTubers ever, he's done a video per day for the past, I think, 1,350 days. He's crazy. He's working every day. He's like, I
Yeah.
don't know. And he was speaking, and he was just putting it into perspective. Think about if you want to make a YouTube channel, right? Or we go to that idea of what you said, taking a half hour each day, 5 days a week during school to ask the kids what they want to do. Of course, their opinion will change, maybe even every day. But if we go back to the YouTube channel, what gives you more potential to grow? Making 365 days of videos, so you have 365 days to correct yourself, to grow, and to get better, or to only do it once per month, so only 12 times. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously it's the idea of going through the process and doing it more often, right?
Yeah.
Naturally. Yeah, so I don't know. I think it's kind of crazy in that sense. And I think it would be really, really interesting to see what the change on younger generations would be if they have that ability to recognize that maybe they don't want to go in the direction that they're forced, or maybe they don't want to, maybe they are capable of changing the direction that they're going in.
Yeah.
So in a perfect world, maybe. I mean, you never really know what really could happen there, but yeah, I definitely think it would be. I think it'd definitely be really important. It'd be good.
Yeah. And I think it's just like about, I mean, you're not going to change the whole world from today to tomorrow just because everyone thinks, oh yeah, that makes sense what those two guys are talking about. But we talked about exactly the topic yesterday in communication for social development, one of the modules we have here in Seville. And we talked about like the educational system. And then one guy said, well, like if you would make everybody the boss, there wouldn't be any workers to be in the companies, to be in the system, which is true. But I think even if you would give everybody the chance to do what they want, at least half of the people wouldn't want to be the boss just because they don't like taking so much responsibility, but they're very good at asking, yo, what can I do for you today? I'll grind through it, have a perfect day, and the boss will have the perfect help to that. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, of course.
if we introduce something like that, like so let's say we're successful with it, and I invite everybody to do that with me because that is my bigger goal. I want to be financially independent for myself, of course, to enjoy the things I want to do, to travel the world, but that will be fun for 2 weeks, and then it would get boring. So I asked myself what it is I want to do further than that. And I definitely want to change some things in the educational system in Germany and around the world to introduce topics like that. Just like start with like having new modules for people that go to the university to study to become a teacher. Not only the modules they have, but also kind of having this apprenticeship or seminars on how to be a coach, or to have some sort of like skills to not make therapy, but ask the kids the right questions they're not able to ask themselves yet. Because essentially, that is what coaching, mentoring, or therapy is. It's just like laid out in different directions. But essentially, now your therapist asks you questions or started to ask you questions that you can ask yourself at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, the thing that I found really fascinating was this idea that obviously, so I would describe the situation on how, for example, the situation and how I would sort of cope with it, my mental process, what I would want to do after, and how I'd react to it, essentially.
Yeah.
And basically, her particular method of going through it would be to play some kind of scenario in where I would take a look at this particular scenario from a different perspective. So, for example, if someone else was going through the same situation and how I would predict that they would react. And I think it's interesting because a lot of people don't see themselves as, they don't treat themselves like other people. I find this really, really fascinating as well because what happens is a lot of people are really harsh on themselves and they don't
Yeah.
really they don't, right? Yeah, that's the thing, right? Because everyone's like it, but then we don't really treat other people how harshly, for example, we might treat ourselves. And I think that's kind of ridiculous. And I think we need to start treating ourselves a lot more compassionately, for example,
Yeah.
with how we might treat other people.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's a very beneficial thing to do, because obviously if you start giving yourself a little less pressure and you start working on things like that, I mean, the beneficial motivation from treating yourself with a little bit more compassion and less pressure and less, really just saying like, oh, well, you should have done that. That wasn't good enough. Then you
Because
have a lot more space to sort of
be,
grow up into that.
exactly,
Yeah,
because what you just said, you should have done better. That's again the program that's being taught to us in school.
exactly.
You could have done that better again, but instead we're not going to talk about the 80% of what you did right. We're going to talk about 20% you did wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that now brings us to a very, very important topic, because now I think we've analyzed, also like Thaddeus, the guy from the event, I've mentioned him, Thaddeus Karoma. Everybody that's interested in growing at least a little bit and that has either Instagram or YouTube, check this guy out, Thaddeus Karoma. It will change your life. If you don't have the patience to listen, I'm sorry for you. But he said that as well. We talk about problems and solving them. We shouldn't spend more than 5% of our time and energy on analyzing what the problem is, but rather 95% on finding the best solution for it. And if we talk about that, now we've mentioned, okay, we can go back to what the root of our problem is, no matter if it's, trying to stop smoking or changing ourselves for the better, to love ourselves more or get better at a certain sport or business or whatever it is. We've analyzed, okay, we need to go back to what the root is in order to change it. And there's ways to build your environment, with a mentor, with good friends, with therapy, with coaching, maybe also just with people that are like you, that want to get further, because that already creates so much energy. Lions hunt with lions naturally. And that doesn't mean they have to be around you constantly, but you just need to know they're there. So I guess I think this is the overall picture. Now let's go into, because we're 20 minutes in, I think we have another 10 to 15 minutes. Let's go into how you can do that on a daily basis, because the problem most of the people have, and I include myself to that 100% when it comes to eating healthy, which is again, self-respect. One of the guys on the event, he hit me hard with that. He said exactly the same as you said. We respect almost everybody with everything we do, the way we talk, the advice we give them. But most of us don't respect ourselves enough to train every day and to eat healthy every day, because that's self-respect to our body, to our mind naturally as well.
Yeah, of course.
So how do we do this change constantly? Because staying with it continuously is way harder than understanding what we can do in the long term to change it. We talked about energy and law of attraction. Go ahead and
so I mean, obviously it helps if you spend, in my opinion, it helps a lot if you're able to receive some of that energy, that well-being, by spending the time with people with similar sort of energies and well-beings, people who have similar values and have similar goals and stuff like that, right? Obviously that helps a lot. And with this idea of law of attraction, obviously if you are going to be hanging out with these people, then you're going to fit in quite well, because you're going to be providing for them and they're going to be providing for you, and then it's just a really perfect circle of growth in that sense. Obviously there's that sense in a social aspect, but also in the individual aspect, like you were saying. If you do respect yourself in that, if you can give yourself that respect and that idea of, okay, so I need to do this, I need to do that, okay, that's all right. But you just need to be, I think people need to be a lot more sort of generous to themselves in that, because there's no point in saying like, okay, so shit, I didn't do that. I didn't, for example, do that task today. That's a shame, that's frustrating, but rather say, okay, I did do all of this today. I did manage that. Although I didn't do maybe one or two things, I did, you know, the 6 or 8 other things that I managed that I wanted to do. And I think when you think in that direction, it's also a lot more advantageous because you get that feeling of respect and you get that appreciation from yourself that you can actually bounce back from, and it sort of helps you with that next day, you know, that next opportunity where you need to prove, where you need to work. And I think that's the, to be completely honest, I think that's the opportunity of giving yourself the energy. Is it's just that perspective, it's swapping it out, it's getting away from this idea that we're, you know, we have to do all of the things right and we have to 100%, you know, perfectly contribute or anything like that. I mean, there's, I think there has to be some kind of balance there. I don't know.
Perfection is the killer to progress.
Yeah,
Period.
yeah, of
That's
course.
what it is. And I think, like, again, there is the point where you can make a decision for yourself, either if you're gonna take it or leave it. You know, if you're gonna accept that you're not gonna be perfect, but that's also not what it's about. It's to get further with the things you actually want to do, that, you know, apply to your values and standards that you you know, can set for yourself before you get started. And I think it's very important what you said, individually and in society, that at a certain point, after you've found out what your why is and where you want to go, you can just use the law of attraction to make it easier. Because again,
Mm.
I know there's so many skeptics, and it's way too spiritual for the most of the people, which I think is very ironic, because if you look at the source and the root of the law of attraction, it's actually something, um, in comparison to religion, for example. I'm not going to hate on anyone that's religious. Everybody can do whatever they want. I'm just saying the law of attraction is something that's actually scientifically proven, because we're all made of mass, matter, and energy. We have molecules in our body and atoms, that connect with the earth and the universe we live in. And it's basic physics that, like a magnet, you know, things that are alike attract each other. And again, you
Yeah.
can take it or leave it. I've found out for myself by reading and watching The Secret, which is a book and movie, over and over again, and I've shared the experience through that book with other people, and the law of attraction and energy, that you can then actually consciously start to use that. And you can do that with almost everything, no matter if it's, you know, tomorrow I'm going to have a good day, just that. And
Yeah.
then naturally you wake up, because your subconscious works most when you're asleep, and you're going to have a good day, because subconsciously it's like another person working for you in your head, trying to find things that going to make your day good, and you're going to look at things differently, just because you're looking for it. It's the same example, with this basic example of, like, oh, I just saw a yellow car. You
Mm.
can bet your ass you're going to see more yellow cars today than any
Mm.
other day before.
It's
Try it
this,
out.
it's just changing this perspective, right? It's this,
Yeah.
yeah, that's, I mean, really, it's as simple as that sometimes. I mean, obviously, it can be difficult as well. When people are, you know, stuck in particular situations and they can't really manage to get out of them. I mean, I understand that that is difficult to just change your perspective like that sometimes, but and that's where I think it is really helpful to sort of seek the help, whether it be from friends and family, and try and, you know, seek people who are surrounding or who are providing the energy that you really want to have. I think that's where you kind of want to, yeah. I mean, that's what will help you focus on a different perspective, which will eventually, obviously, help yourself, and then you'll be able to progress in the direction that you want to.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And I think that goes along with, you know, being true to yourself, not to be too hard on yourself. Also, taking breaks.
Mm.
It's also something I think is very important. If we talk about giving 100% instead of 99, that one extra percent will change a lot for you in the long run, because it's going to make a lot of things easier. Because think about it with training, if you work out constantly, you progress, and each workout doesn't feel as hard as in comparison that you would train every other week or every other month. If you haven't worked out in a while, you're going to be very sore. It's going to be very hard to get back into it, as it is with everything else. So I think, yeah, go ahead.
That's true. But it is also important to take those breaks.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying. But those should be planned breaks, or that you listen to your body and you say, or your mind also, okay, I need this break now, because it's simple as that. If you don't take your breaks are going to take you.
Yeah.
And that can be as simple as like, I need to sit down. And maybe you get into bad habits like watching TV all night or having bad food or something, which is okay if you choose to do that. And if it doesn't just happen to you without you having any control over it. But it can also be something worse that might make you more of an effort to get out of it, like burnout, like depression, like being sick. Like I've realized that until like a year ago, actually, that I got sick very often just because I wasn't treating myself well in terms of always running, doing things, and didn't take those breaks. So at a certain point, my body was like, okay, dude, if you're not going to take that responsibility, we're going to shut you down for a week or two.
That's exactly
until you learn.
What happened. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why it's so important to listen to your body and your mind, like you said, because I don't know, people don't really do that. They focus on what they want to do, and then they go out and they do it, and they run into problems. And then instead of listening to, for example, some of these problems and maybe trying to figure it out or taking a break, they push through it and they think, okay, no, I just manage it, I'll just force it. But I think the problem with that is you end up running into these same problems and the same issues, whether it be getting sick all the time, or not being able to do what you want to really do, or not feeling the satisfaction that you're looking for in life. I think you just need to start, I think people need to start listening to their minds and their bodies, because that's really the best sort of, I don't know, that's honestly the best guidance that we can all have. It's just listening to ourselves. But
all right, so let me summarize that. So we want to listen to ourselves. We want to give ourselves time and love to listen to what we want to do, to listen to our body, to listen to our mind. We want to try to do more things consciously, because we know that 5% of our mind work consciously and the rest actually works subconsciously. And it takes about, I think, 3 to 4 weeks, so let's say a month, to change beliefs or to change things that are in your subconscious, to actually change it for the better. And those can be beliefs concerning money. Those can be beliefs, a certain way how you deal with people, or how you actually communicate. There's a lot of energy that lays in how you communicate with yourself and your surroundings. And I think also, again, there's plenty of examples. Like, take waking up. There's this book called The 5-Second Rule. I think I made a whole episode about that right at the beginning of this podcast last year. You have about 5 seconds in the morning to consciously decide whether you're going to get up or not. After those 5 seconds, your subconscious is going to start to make excuses for you to lay in bed. That's not you yourself actively controlling that. Those are beliefs that you've picked up over time that make the decisions for you. And that sucks, because just as much as that, I don't want any other person to make decisions for myself. I want to be, I want to have the power of what I do. So I think that is very important to see that this is something for the long haul. It's not going to change over time. And again, coming back to what you said in the beginning, kind of getting this frame, admitting to yourself when you need help, when you can't do it on your own anymore. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to go to therapy, by the way, but it can mean that you're allowed to give yourself that treat. Because let's look at it like that, let's take the word of therapy out of this negative perspective. At the end of the day, it's just somebody that's better at something than you at the moment that is willing to help you and that is willing to give you this sort of treatment, just like if you go to a massage or if you go to a spa. There's people that are good at, treating their body, treating your body well, that apparently you haven't done in a while for yourself. Otherwise you wouldn't need it.
Yeah, of course. I think it's just, personally, I think the biggest challenge that most people have is this idea of asking for help or asking themselves for help. This idea of just being like taking that first step, because really, I mean, it's the case with everything, right? With anything that we don't really feel like we want to do, or we don't have enough trust, or we have doubts or whatever, it's always that first step that's the hardest. And then after you've done that, you realize, okay, it wasn't so bad, or at least you've committed to a little bit, and then it gets easier and easier. But this first idea of thinking like, okay, yeah, well, maybe I try it out, it could help or it could not, and then if either way, it doesn't matter. I mean, the fact is that you can only really benefit from asking for help if you feel like you need it. So
and I think that comes back to, and now this is the very perfect frame, because I think the first sentence or the first phrase we talked about is making that change while living within the confinements of society. Because if you accept the fact that if you want to change for the better for yourself personally, then it's not going to be with the appreciation of everyone in society. Because there's always going to be people that will not like what you do, no matter what it is you do. You're never going to please everyone, sorry. And there is always going to be the point where you're going to have to make a decision. Am I going to do it for myself, or am I going to take a step back for myself in order to please everyone else around me? And that's just a yes or no decision, just like a lot of other things we've talked about.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, man. Definitely.
Bro, I think we couldn't have any better ending. Thank you a lot for the energy in the room. I think that a lot of people that take the time to listen to this, I don't know, it was 40 minutes, will take a lot away from this. I'm sure that you will be back on the podcast again. I'm excited to see you in summer again when I'm back in Germany. You're always welcome in Andalusia, in the south of Spain. I'm always here. So yeah, I will talk to you soon. Yeah, no. Thank you for being here.
No, thanks for having me. It's always good fun.
All right. Thank you, man. Talk to you soon. Bye. Yeah.